There we go. All righty. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the new GUI. You may not have noticed the new GUI. In order to be able to access our new GUI, you have to go up in the top there and click where it says Try New Nebula, and that'll take you over to our new GUI interface. Go ahead and give that a shot. Some of the new features that we rolled out in this update are only available through the GUI, through the new GUI. So here's what it looks like when you log in. The key thing here, let's see if I can get my laser pointer working. The key thing I want to highlight is over here, we are looking for your feedback. We do consider this a beta of the new GUI. So if you have any suggestions, you find some English that needs to be fixed, anything like that, you click over here on the left of the screen and give us that feedback. As you can see here, the navigation bar can be collapsed. So if you're not seeing the navigation bar, there's going to be something up here that you need to click on to make that appear again. And now when you're looking at your dashboard, you can customize which little widgets show up, so which information you're seeing on that dashboard, instead of being stuck with just that fixed dashboard that we had previously. And then if you decide you don't like this new GUI, you like the old GUI, you can always go back, at least for now. At some point here, this will become the default interface or the only interface for Nebula. I don't have a timeline on when that will be, but at least for the next few months, this will be something optional that you can use. So we've made some other changes here if you're using the new GUI interface. So we've changed the way you set up your SSIDs, tried to make the interface a little bit cleaner for you, and to make it easier for you to get to the different key settings that you're going to need. So we've got the ability there with some quick little edit buttons to make it easier for you to change the SSID, set up scheduling and things like that. So again, we've made changes here to where you go to set up your VLAN IDs, rate limiting, and things like that, as well as your captive portal. We've given you a little bit more flexibility in how you can edit the captive portal for how it's going to appear without needing to edit the HTML and CSS files, although that still remains for those of you that want a lot more control over what you're doing. Here's the new radio settings page. So we put the smart steering now is in this page. You no longer have to jump back and forth between two different screens to get to that. And we just made some other things here a little bit easier for you to find and turn on and off. So we can now filter clients for the wireless by which VLAN they're on. We've got a new gateway NSS analysis report here, so we've updated that to give you a little bit more detail to let you break it down more. So you can go into an individual client and get a complete breakdown of what they've been doing on the network. So now we've got all of our security services are grouped in one page. We're no longer having to jump back and forth between different screens. So some other enhancements here that we've made for you. We've tried to improve the performance, so there should be a lot less lag and delay for screens to be showing when using the new interface, particularly on larger locations where you've got a lot of devices or a lot of clients. We've tried to make it easier for you to get back to the MSP portal to jump between your customers and see what's going on. We've added a number of tooltips that you can hover over that will give you some suggestions or help explain what that feature is, something that we've been having a lot of people asking for. And we've added additional information as far as like the IP address details. So a bunch of new stuff that can be done there. We can change column widths and a lot of those different reports that you see. So we'll keep on going through here. So we've added this here. It's a new wizard for setting up Wi-Fi that you can choose to use. So we've made it really easy here. So when you're setting up your SSID, you can also set up the gateway VLAN interface. So that way, as soon as you hit and apply this, it's working. You no longer have to go in, set up your Wi-Fi, and jump over into the gateway interface and change things there. You do it all on one screen. And we've added a new guest Wi-Fi sort of wizard here for you. So again, when you're doing this, it makes it easier for you to set up the VLAN on the gateway that's going to be associated with that guest SSID for your wireless guests. And when you set this up, it will automatically set up layer 2 isolation on that network. So if you don't want layer 2 isolation, you'll need to turn that off. So we've added a new thing here called Smart VLANs. So we've got one set up here on the guest network. You can choose to enable this. All existing sites that you have will have this off by default. Any new sites you set up will have this on by default. So it handles a bunch of things when it comes here to help simplify things as far as automatically creating your VLAN interface and assigning it to the guest network and setting it up on the Nebula gateway itself. I should stop here. One thing I do want to highlight there is it does not set up any switch settings. It's by default all switch ports are set up as trunks. So you will still need to manually set up your switch ports and VLAN interface on the switch. So this is just showing here the gateway guest interface here. So if you've got Smart VLAN enabled, when you turn on guest on the gateway VLAN interface there, it'll automatically set up the SSID as a guest SSID that's configured to use that same VLAN tag. And sort of same thing here, if you're trying to delete a VLAN interface from your gateway, if it's currently being used by any SSID, it'll pop up a warning and let you know. And if you go into the gateway and change a VLAN ID, it will automatically give you the option there to automatically update and change the wireless LAN settings that are using that VLAN ID. So you don't have to go in and go back to the wireless side to make that change. So if you're going into your SSIDs and you're setting up a new SSID and you put in a VLAN number that isn't currently configured on the gateway, it'll give you the little pop-up there letting you configure your gateway settings for that VLAN without having to jump between the wireless and the gateway interface. So again, this is just showing here, doing the sort of same thing here. If you set up an SSID and flag it as guest, it'll automatically give you the prompting to set that up as part of your gateway rules. So we'll move on here to our alerts. So one of the problems we ran into is we have this nice thing in Nebula where if we detect, a device goes offline, we'll send you a push alert or an email and let you know, hey, that went offline. The problem we had with it is some of you out there use PoE scheduling to automatically disable your access points at certain times. For instance, you don't want the APs accessible in the evening when everyone should have gone home for the day. And so what would happen is we would schedule that AP to turn off, and then the alert would start coming to you saying, hey, that AP is no longer connected to the network. So we've fixed that for you. So we now know which AP is connected to which port. And we now know if that AP goes offline because of a switch schedule on the PoE power to not send you alerts about that device since it's supposed to be off. So we've also gone through there and fixed the email alerts that get sent to you to make it a lot easier for you to figure out what's going on. So this is a problem, a number of you have complained about, which is, hey, you get these great alerts saying something went offline, but good golly, try to figure out who that alert is for. So now we fixed that. So when you get the email alerts, or the push alerts, you'll see up there in the subject that we do have the name. We've put the organization name then in the body of the email itself, so now alert test site 1, here's the notifications coming in and which test site it was for. So now you can quickly and easily see the name of the site and the name of the organization that site is linked to when you get those alerts to make that a lot easier for you. Continuing on here, same thing when it comes to the summary reports, those automatically emailed reports. We'll go ahead and have added the organization name and the site name into the body of the email itself and the site name into the subject to make it easier for you on quick glance to see who it's for. Or if you're setting up filtering rules in Gmail or elsewhere, make it easy for you to filter based on the site. Okay, moving on to access points. This is one probably no one that I know of has been asking for, but apparently somebody did. So we've now got the ability in there to set your access point to not use WPA2, but to set it to only use WPA1. And that works on most models. It doesn't work on the Broadcom-based models, and as you see there on the interface, we've got a little hover over there so you can see exactly which models are and are not supported by this. I'm guessing this comes up if you've got legacy devices, particularly industrial legacy devices that were built years and years and years ago and do not support WPA2. So moving on to the switches, we've got a new switch model that we recently launched. It is the XS3800-28. So this is a Nebula Flex model. So this has been a complaint we've gotten a lot of, which is, you know, we've got all of these, what I'll call edge switches, but we didn't really have any core switches as part of the Nebula. So this is our first core switch. So it's a 24-port switch. It comes bundled with 1 year of Nebula Pro licenses, and it supports multi-gig ports. So you will see here that there are some features that are currently missing if you use it with Nebula management. So you'll miss out on hardware stacking, static routes, and DHCP server relay. So if you need those features, you do need to use this in standalone mode still. But if you don't need those, you can switch it over into cloud mode and manage it through Nebula. And just to see here, switching over to cloud mode is a little bit more complicated than it is on our other Nebula Flex switches. You will need to log into the device, disable stacking, which I believe is enabled by default. The switch will then reload its configuration and reboot, and then you will need to enable NCC discovery, so Nebula Control Center discovery. Once you've enabled that, then you can register the device in the Nebula cloud, and it will automatically reboot into Nebula mode. And it's just showing there, you can see one of the new features here is on the copper ports, you can choose what speed you want them to operate on, whether you want them to be 10G, 5G, 2.5G, or just your standard gig. On the gateway side of things, we've made some changes to the VPN. So one of the problems we've had with PCI compliance is some of the PCI scans will see that ports are open. It doesn't matter that we aren't allowing anybody to connect to it, they will flag that as part of your PCI. So previously the way around this was you notify us, hey, the particular PCI scan that I'm using, they're flagging this, and then we would go in and fix it for you on the back end. So we've now added the ability through the GUI to go ahead and disable all the VPN ports. So we will pass those PCI scans that are scanning for it. We've also added the ability to do a virtual server for VPN functionality. So those can be used for both internal VPN devices as well as external virtual WAN forwarding for doing VPN, while keeping the external WAN TCP, UDP ports disabled for those PCI scans. So we've changed the what was previously listed as L2TP over IPSec. So we've gone ahead there and changed it to just IPSec client. So these are for your remote devices. So we currently support the Zyxel IPSec VPN client, the Cisco iOS IPSec client, and Android's built-in default VPN client. So we got a question here. On the new and old MCC, how can you see the deployed devices if you've uploaded a site photo? Let me get back to that at the end. Let me stick with what's on the slides, and we'll get back to that here when I get to the end of the slides, David. So this is just also showing here, we've now added support for non-Nebula VPNs, IPv2 based, which includes your Azure VPN. So if you're using Azure cloud services, you can now create a VPN tunnel between the Nebula NSG gateway and that Azure cloud there. We give you two choices here, policy-based or static route. So it's just showing here, if you use a policy-based VPN, it does require IPv1, and it will allow spoke sites to be able to reach the Azure hub, on the Azure hub only. If you go in and use route-based VPNs, it uses IPv2, and this will allow spoke sites to reach the hub or other spoke sites. We've added the ability on the content filtering to now set up content filtering by specific interfaces instead of just being blanketly applied across all interfaces. So that is it. Those are the key main features that we added with the latest update to Nebula. The next update to Nebula is planned for, call it mid-January. So we'll have another webinar after that rolls out, going over some of what are the new interfaces, new changes, things like that. So if you have any questions, send them in to me via Q&A, and I will try to answer them. Otherwise, thanks, guys, for turning out. I hope there was some useful information here. So back to David Gould's question, which was, on the old and the new Nebula Control Center, how can you see the deployed devices if you've uploaded a site photo? I'm not sure I'm understanding the question, but I'll take a stab at it here. So one of the things that Nebula does is it allows you to put devices on a map. And if you don't want to use the map, instead you can upload a photo of the site, a blueprint, whatever you want to call it, and then drag and drop the devices on that. So you can do that in there. It would be the same place where the Google Map stuff is. Basically, it replaces the Google Map. So I believe in the interface it's under site-wide settings. If you go under site-wide, I forget which specific option it is under site-wide, but that's where it should be. So that'll be where you upload, instead of the Google Map, you upload your blueprints or floor plan or whatever it is. And then once you've done that, that should start showing up on the individual devices, and you can drag and drop them onto that site map. I think that answers your question. I honestly haven't played with it too much. If that didn't answer your question, or you think that answer is wrong, go ahead and reach out to us. You can either reach out to me directly via email or give our tech support a call, and they should be able to help you out with that. So Joe is asking here a question. Joe is asking, is there a report in Nebula Control Center that shows antivirus actions and prevention? So yes, there is. So if you have Nebula Gateway and you have active Nebula services providing UTM functionality, there are reports for each of those UTM functions, and it does give you a breakdown on that, and it will show you what has been blocked, which IP addresses the attack came from, which internal IP addresses the attack was based on, the time of the attack, and those are all summarized in a report. The report for sure requires an active Nebula Security Services license, obviously for the security services to function. It may require an active ProPack license for that report. It may not work on free Nebula. I don't remember off the top of my head if those two are tied together or if it's only tied to having an active Nebula antivirus IDP UTM subscription. Joe is asking where to find that report. Hold on just a second, guys. So yeah, Jacob confirmed, just came in here and confirmed for me that in order to be able to view that report, you do have to have the Nebula ProPack active to get that report. I knew that was required for the Wi-Fi reports, the IPTV reports. Wasn't sure on the security report. So yes, you do have to have both an active Nebula license, and you have to have Nebula ProPack license and an active Nebula Security Services license to be able to view that report. That should be viewable for you via the GUI there. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly which menu items it takes to get to it, but it is definitely in there. And if you want to reach out to me, my email's there on the screen. You can just send me an email with that question, and I can go ahead and document that to you and send you out an email with the screenshots of how to get to it. And then otherwise, you know, you can always just call in and call tech support, and they can help out with that. So I'll stick around here for a few more seconds, but in case anyone else had any questions, I'll do my best to try to answer them for you. Again, you know, we're doing webinars. This is the second webinar this week. And most weeks we have at least one, sometimes two different webinars in various topics. We need your help to let us know what topics, what information you're going to find useful. Are there specific scenarios you need to deploy? Are there certain features you want to learn more about how to configure and set those up? Send those to us. Either send them directly to me via email or send them into your sales rep, Jacob, Ivan, Sandy, and let them know so they can pass that on to us, because we need your ideas as to what's going to be useful and beneficial for you. So let us know. That feedback absolutely gets taken into account and helps us decide which new topics, which new webinars, which new things we should focus on for you. So David Gould is asking a question here about the UAG. So right now, if you're using Nebula, Nebula can only manage the NSG security gateway devices. So if you want to use Nebula to manage the gateway, you do have to use the Nebula NSG gateway. The VPN appliances, or SD-WAN functionality, that is managed through something that's also called Nebula. It's called Nebula Cloud Coordinator. So that is separate from the Nebula Control Center, which was what we're talking about today. And then all of our other devices, the USG devices, VPN devices, UAG, USG, the ATP, all of those are still considered standalone devices. If you're looking for sort of centralized management of those, and you've got a lot of them, we have our Secu deployer and our Secu report software that you can get from us that does that. At some point, eventually, everything will be managed. Everything Zyxel puts out will be manageable through the Nebula interface. But at least for right now, those devices are not manageable through Nebula. So you can obviously mix and match. You can use Nebula to manage your switches and access points, and then just manage your ATP or USG security gateway the old-fashioned way. But yeah, eventually it'll get to Nebula. I'm not going to promise any dates on when that's going to happen. A big difference here has been that the Nebula interface, the whole idea behind the cloud-managed interface, is to try to make things simpler and more streamlined. So if you need those more advanced features that aren't available in the Nebula interface, that's still going to have to be done directly. And even going forward, once everything is manageable by Nebula, there probably still will be some functionality that will require standalone management, just because of the idea behind Nebula being streamlined and easier to use. So those of you out there that need those really advanced functionality, really advanced configuration, that may never come to Nebula. Maybe it will, but not anytime soon. Hope that helps, guys. I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. I don't have any other questions pending. If there was something you were working on, go ahead and highlight it real quick, hit copy, and then just email it to me. Again, my email, it's up on the screen, but it is Shawn R, SHAWNR, @Zyxel.com. And of course, you can always reach us by just emailing sales@Zyxel.com or partner@Zyxel.com. Thanks, guys.